Warhammer 3. It's coming. It's nearly here, goddammit. I was lucky enough to get my hands on it for about 3 hours the other week, where I tried to gather as much information as I possibly could to share with you sexy bastards. So in this video we're going to take a look at all the units that I got to play with as Kislev and all the units I got to play against from Khorne's Chaos. I have tried to make this as similar as possible to my usual unit covering videos, but do understand I was limited on time, so I couldn't quite take the time to get all the nice perfect shots and everything, but we'll get a look at all the units at least. So let's kick it off with Kislev, the faction I got to play as. We got a fair chunk of their army as well throughout the whole thing. It was the new survival game mode where you progress through taking checkpoints in a chaos realm to defeat the greater demon there. I have a video on that which I'll link at the end if you want to learn more. But playing as Kislev, we got maybe like half the army, I would guess. There's about 13 units here. So we're going to get a good idea of what to expect from Kislev. Let's kick it off with the big lady herself, Tsarina Katarin. One of our legendary lords for Kislev. She is a wizard, of course. Stats-wise, she has a bit of an odd amount of armor at only 6, but I imagine she'll actually get a little bit more. Decent leadership and very quick on her feet, although not really on her feet because she actually travels on her ice, as you can see. And of course, this is all still in development, as it says in the top left, so before you moan about that animation, do take that into consideration. And she does actually have pretty good combat stats, decent melee attack, which has magical attacks and frostbite, as well as decent weapon strength, although not armor piercing, which is pretty good for a wizard. Normally they don't have big weapon strength, and decent melee defense as well. So she's a wizard, but not a pushover in melee. For her abilities, we've got this new setup in the unit cards now. You can see the abilities in a little more detail, which is nice. She's got a 10% ward save, so that avoids all damage by 10%. A missile resistance, encourage, hide, buy our blood, which is the new Kislev ability. When they drop below 50% base health, they get 16 leadership, but only for 35 seconds. But it helps them keep fighting. If they take a lot of damage quickly, they should be able to stay in the fight. There's also this new wounds ability, which is on every single entity unit, which reduces their damage output and their speed when they drop below 50% health, which I think is an attempt to make them more manageable at the end of a battle. She also has Frost Shield, which is an area effect, plus 15 armor and block chance, map-wide, so everyone in the army, for 11 seconds, but only when she's casting. But still, great support ability. She also has the Crystal Cloak, a defensive ability for herself, that gives her 22% physical resistance, again, while she's casting. For a usable ability, she has Frostfang, which is a big explosion icy spell, which does a lot of damage in the area that she casts it. Although limited in its uses, but maybe that was just for this mode, who knows. And then we have all the new magic in the lore of ice. Starting with Crystal Sanctuary, which gives a 66% damage resistance to a friendly unit, but they cannot move while it's active. This isn't necessarily a bad thing though if a unit is already in combat. And then we have Frostblade, which increases base weapon damage, armor piercing weapon damage, and melee attack for a friendly target that she casts it on for 26 seconds. So a pretty nice duration, a good support for a single friendly unit. And then we have Ice Maiden's Kiss, a breath spell, much like the ones we have already, does a big wide cone-shaped spell, lots of damage to lightly armored troops in particular usually. So that's a damage spell, and then we have another damage spell, Death Frost, a direct damage spell to a single target for 27 seconds, damage over time, lots of hurt to be put on an enemy. Kinda similar to the Fate of Yuna that we have from the Death Lore book. So a strong spell for whittling down those elite units perhaps. And then we have Ice Sheet, which is a speed reduction spell, reducing speed and charge speed of an area as well, not just a single unit, so you could get a few units with this for 17 seconds as well, so that's a fair duration to buy you some time. And then we have Heart of Winter, a direct damage area spell that reduces speed and does damage, increasing over time. You can see it starts off with just a minus 15% speed debuff, up to a 60% speed debuff, with the damage increasing over time as well. So a really nice AoE damage spell there. So that's the lot. I'll go through and just show you the overcast effects. You can have a look at that if you wish. But overall, a big damage lore book. It seems lots of damage spells, lots of buffing up of the damage or creating opportunities for damage with those slow spells. That'll give missiles more time to fire and lay into stuff. So big damage lore book with a bit of support in there as well. So that is your Ice Lady, Tsarina Katarin. Looking like a pretty sweet lord. She's a wizard, but she's also got some melee skills and that big damage lore book. Not sure whether she might get some mounts other than her ice. Maybe a bear, who knows. But looking good either way. But somebody is getting a bear mount, and it's a hero, Vitali Slakta. Seems like a good all-rounder hero, good defensive stats and offensive stats, although not a great deal of melee defense. Armor-piercing weapon damage though, although not a ton of it, but does have a pretty beefy charge bonus, so he's going to be decent in the melee. But where this fella shines is in his abilities, which have some great support potential. Salyak's Lullaby, an AoE heal, 15% heal amount over 15 seconds. I guess that means 15% of a unit's health will be healed up, so a nice support ability from that, always good to have those heals. And then an area buff for friendly troops, 36% charge bonus and 8 leadership in an area, so this could be good teamed up with cavalry, increasing their charge bonus if he travels around with them. Some bear cavalry charges with extra damage. Oh Christ. And he also has that wounds ability like Katerin had, and then Buy Our Blood again, which I think every Kislev unit has, that extra leadership, so a nice support hero, but also some melee potential. And onto the only dedicated melee infantry that we had, as all the others had ranged attacks as well. They are a high tier infantry, which we can tell now by the little symbol next to the amount of men in the unit. You can see that gold kind of diamond shape with the 3 in it. You'll also notice a silver version of that with a 2 in it, and a bronze version of that with a 1 in it. So we now have low tier, mid tier, high tier in a symbol, which is nice. We've had that in previous Total Wars like Attila. Nice to see it back, making its way into Warhammer. But the Sar Guard seemed to be a very tough holding unit, kind of similar to Tomb Guard perhaps. They got a lot of melee defense, decent amount of armor, silver shield, lots of leadership, not bad melee attack and weapon strength, but nothing special, a little bit of a charge bonus. But yeah, a good frontline holding unit, likely to buy time for all the missiles that Kislev are going to have with a lot of their dual hybrid infantries. This one will be able to hold things back. Got that Buy Our Blood trait as well, like I said, most units are going to have that. Sar Guard, looking cool. Onto the Mustache Guard in the Kossars. These are bow and axe infantry, so a hybrid unit. Low tier though, you can see the bronze one there showing they're a low tier unit. But they got those decent melee stats, so they can survive in melee a little bit. And of course they have that ranged attack, not bad range at 140, 20 missile strength. They do actually have a little bit of armor. I'm not sure why it's showing 0 here. They're debuffed by something, but I think they got about 15. Going to be one of the low tier early campaign units for Kislev, I imagine. And there's also a variant on them, the Kossars with spears, who are anti-large. Very much the same deal, they just have that anti-large potential. So they could be more useful on the flanks, they can protect themselves, they do have a charge defense as well. So they're going to be like a really budget Lothan Sea Guard essentially, although not as tough with their lack of armor. Another early game unit, I'm sure. And then to one of my favourite units I got to play as Kislev, the Streltsi. Their weapon is just too freaking cool. It's a handgun mixed in with an axe on the end. It's glorious. Another hybrid unit that's pretty decent in melee with armor piercing damage as well from that axe. And their missile attack is very similar to handgunners from the Empire, which is armor piercing as well, so you can expect similar performance there. Going to be a really versatile unit, I think, with the ability to take on the front line potentially, or to fall back and be a ranged unit as well if they want to, or a little bit of both. So pretty much an upgrade from the Kossars, but with armor piercing damage on both kinds of their attack. Streltsi looking very nice. And then we have, guess what, another hybrid unit, the Ice Guard with glaives. Their thing though is that they are anti-large, as well as having magical attacks on both their melee and missile attack, and frostbite to slow things down by 36%, which is going to be very useful when they're fighting large stuff. When it tries to get away from them, like cavalry especially, they'll be able to keep up with them better. So kind of similar to the Streltsi in ways, but they have their more niche uses, like using their magical attack to beat physical resistances, or their chill ability to slow things down. And of course they're anti-large. This was the only Ice Guard unit I got to play, but as it says glaives in bracket, it suggests there might be another Ice Guard unit. That's it for the infantry. On to the cavalry, starting with horse archers, who are pretty much as it sounds. They are just regular old horse archers, skirmish cav, nothing too special about them. They're okay in melee, although not a lot of armor or melee defense. They could perhaps chase down missile infantry or other skirmish cav though. Then to a mid-tier cav with the Winged Lancers. Their melee attack and weapon strength isn't too special, but that's why they have a big 60 charge bonus that they'll need to make use of. They are a shock cav, they'll need to cycle charge to be effective. Also that low melee defense is going to hurt them if they stay in combat. No armor piercing damage, so kind of similar to Empire Knights or maybe Silver Helms, but they do cause fear, which makes them a little bit different from those cavs. Especially useful in cycle charging things from the back, you'll ruin enemy leadership very quickly. Also aiding your cycle charging power is their pretty ridiculous speed at 84. Most fairly heavy cav like this have around 66 to 75 speed, so these Winged Lancers are going to be pretty difficult to catch. If you want some big boy cav though, the Griffon Legion are the ones you're looking for. Maybe kind of similar to Reichsguard or Dragon Princes, very much the same as the Winged Lancers we just saw, but just upgraded. They've got much better stats all round, but still a shock cavalry, don't have fantastic melee defense, got a big charge bonus though, lots of armor, and they cause that fear, so just a good old traditional hard-hitting human cavalry. And now to the big boy cavalry you've all been waiting for, the Bear Cavalry. War Bear Riders. They look absolutely glorious and have stats to match. Great stats all across the board, although maybe lacking a bit in the melee defense. They are armor piercing and have big weapon strength and are anti-large. So overall kinda similar to Demigriff halberds maybe. Gonna be the anti-large cav of choice, I'm sure, for the Kislevites. I can imagine a big tasty Regiment of Renown version of these as well, so they are freaking awesome, they look cool. There's only 16 of them in the unit though, so it's quite a small unit, but still powerful, the War Bear Riders. If that didn't hit your bear feels enough though, how about an elemental bear? This gargantuan ice bear has a shice a ton of weapon strength, armor piercing, magical attacks, frostbite, its own breath attack, fear, terror, a physical resistance. You name it, this bear has got it. Although it does have very low melee defense, but what do you expect? It's a massive freaking ice bear. To really appreciate its size, you need to see it mashing some stuff up. So here you go. It's around Dreadsaurian size, so we're getting some big old monsters in Warhammer 3. Also nice to see a human faction with a proper monster unit. And lastly for Kislev, Little Grom. It's an artillery pulled by bears. It's essentially a cannon, so good armor piercing strength, lots of range, but also can do okay in melee. It's got anti-infantry and armor piercing and decent weapon strength in the melee. Although not great melee defense, but decent armor and stuff. But most of all, it can move around pretty quick. 35 speed, that's infantry speed, so it can keep up with the rest of your army if you're moving around all over the place. So a nice offensive, unique artillery piece for Kislev. So there you go, a good chunk of the Kislev army. What do you reckon? I personally am very excited for Kislev. I think they're the faction I'm most looking forward to playing with Warhammer 3, although we'll see what happens when Grand Cathay comes along. Maybe they'll take the spot. But lots of nice hybrid missile melee infantry units for Kislev that look pretty cool. Lots of nice cavalry as well that we always have with human factions. Going to be interesting to see how their army really plays in the grand scheme of Total War Warhammer. Now then, to the demons. So this is indeed a Chaos Realm of Khorne, so we are facing Khorne's Chaos Army. Now we didn't get to actually play as Khorne's army, only to fight them in battle, so it's a little bit harder to get good shots of them, but one thing to note that this was the new survival game mode for Warhammer 3, which meant that the enemies we were facing had reduced health. So if you see any health numbers that look really low on these units, or you see these units die really easily, that's why. It's just to make it seem more like you're swarmed by enemies so you can kill them off quicker, but there's going to be more of them. Anyway, let's begin with Skararg Fleshmaw. This was kind of the end game boss, so an exalted Bloodthirster, as you can see under his name. Big damage dealer, lots of melee attack, fire and magical damage, lots of weapon strength, which is being buffed by one of his abilities, Deathbringer, you can see on the card there. But I actually forgot to get decent footage of this guy, so we'll have to make do with what I got. You can see though, he's a big melee powerhouse though, lots of damage, he's got a big charge bonus. He can also fly, he is a flying monster, so he can take off, be really hard to catch, he's very fast with a 95 speed. He's also demonic. Which means if you look next to the encourage symbol on his unit card at the bottom, the little fist, next to that, to the right of that, there's that little kind of demon-y shaped face. That means he's a demonic unit. And what that means is that he will not rout and run away at all. And when he goes below 0 leadership, he will start to lose health gradually, much like, guess what, an undead unit, right? He also gets a physical resistance being a demonic unit, and is immune to terror, although he causes terror anyway. So likely going to be one of the Lord options for the Khorne Chaos Boys. So they're going to have some big tough lords that are going to be hard to catch, especially as they're flying, looking pretty damn brutal. And another unit that I almost missed and didn't really get any footage of is a hero, Varach Skinfeast. Again, he's a demon, so he doesn't rout, he has a physical resistance and is immune to terror, has great melee stats, lots of melee attack, lots of weapon strength, bonus versus infantry, armor piercing, magical attacks, fire damage, so he's going to be great at fighting in crowds, also a massive charge bonus as well, and of course, you can see him on his big old juggernaut mount, so he can get around quickly, a very powerful damage dealer hero, it seems, especially as he won't rout. I forgot to mouse over the tooltips here though, but the two purple icons at the bottom there relate to his demonic trait where he dies slowly like the undead do. It's just relating to that, and of course, eventually hitting the disintegrating sort of stage as well. And safe to assume any abilities he would have would probably buff damage. And then to some infantry with the blood letters of Khorne. A mid-tier damage dealer infantry. They're lacking in the armor and melee defense, so not super tough, but they've got the damage output, okay weapon strength and melee attack, magical attacks as well, armor piercing, bonus versus infantry, and a bit of a charge bonus as well. But also are a demon unit, of course, so they have the physical resistance, they won't rout or run away, and have the immunity to terror. So, that makes them a hell of a lot stronger than if they did break. So Khorne's army is getting some kind of undead vibes going on with these unbreakable, fear-causing units. Possibly going to be the budget frontline damage dealer unit, perhaps. If you want the superior version, you'll get the Exalted Bloodletters of Khorne. Very much the same deal, just more damage output, more melee attack, more weapon strength. Other than that, pretty much the same. So going to perform the same job, just going to be better at it with the more money you spend on them, I imagine. Going to be pretty scary though to have these damage dealer units that you can't route. Now to some big chunky thick boys in the Chaos Warriors of Khorne. Kind of similar to the Chaos Warriors we have already in the Warriors of Chaos, but just a bit stronger in the damage output. They can hold and survive well with decent armor, leadership and melee defense, but they've also got decent melee attack and weapon strength and a bit of a charge bonus as well, and frenzy, not to mention immunity to psychology, so very tough, very strong, hit hard, gonna be pretty freaking scary. Then we have Chaos Warriors of Khorne with halberds. Very similar again to the Chaos Warriors with halberds, armor piercing, anti-large, big tough boys. Lots of armor on, got the charge defense, also has the frenzy and immunity to psychology still, so a little bit more damage dealer than the Warriors of Chaos, Chaos Warriors. With halberds, if that makes sense. Shut up, you know what I mean. But different from the Chaos Warriors, there are Chaos Warriors with dual weapons. These double axe wielding psychos have a mighty 58 weapon strength, which has a bonus versus infantry, although surprisingly no armor piercing. Lots of melee attack though, lacking in the melee defense however, but still lots of armor and decent leadership as well. And not to mention charge bonus, frenzy, immunity, blah blah blah. So lots of heavy armor for these Khorne boys, lots of damage output, especially for these fellas. Although all of these Khorne units seem to have 50 models per unit, which seems kind of small, but it's probably just because of the mode, so hard to say how big these units are actually going to be in the main game. Now to the chunky Juggernaut Cavalry with Blood Crushers of Khorne. And these ones are particularly dangerous as they're ridden by demons. They have the demonic trait, thus physical resistance, don't rout, immune to terror. Not to mention all the big powerful stats, lots of melee attack, lots of weapon strength, armor piercing, anti-infantry, magic damage, big charge bonus, and still super tough with lots of armor. Although quite slow at only 62 speed, but look at the size of them. They're no doubt going to absolutely destroy infantry, especially on the rear charge. They're going to be very dangerous and very difficult to stop potentially, given that they've probably got some pretty chunky mass. So very powerful, unroutable heavy cavalry. If those didn't shit you up enough, then maybe the Skull Crushers of Khorne will do the job. With their 130 armor, a shield, still big weapon strength, its armor piercing, massive charge bonus, and frenzy on top of it all as well. Not to mention good melee attack, decent melee defense for a shock cav. They're going to absolutely savage everybody and be pretty tough to bring down with that big chunky armor. Honestly, it feels like this cav would wipe the floor with every other cav we have in Warhammer 2, but who knows? Just seems like they're going to do absolutely gargantuan amounts of damage on the charge because of their big charge bonus, frenzy as well. It's going to be disgusting. And onto a big beef demon with the Bloodthirster, of course. Again, this big demon chap is going to be similar to the Exalted Bloodthirster we saw earlier, just a little bit less, but still big damage powerhouse, fire, magic, armor piercing, bonus versus large though. So going to be a monster killer, can still fly of course as well. He is being a little bit debuffed at this point though, so his weapon strength isn't quite what it should be, and his leadership as well, but just all round a massive damage dealer. You can see these two abilities linking to his damage trait, Demonic Instability and Banish there. Those are the ones that cause damage when he loses his leadership, like an undead unit with Crumbling and Disintegration. So, massive hulking powerhouse damage dealer demon that is also anti-large by the way, and can fly. Good luck killing him. In this it was quite easy to kill them because they didn't have much health and you could just shoot them down quite easily, but I imagine they're going to be much tougher in the actual game. But Khorne coming out with some big boy units, lots of heavy armor, lots of hard hitters, absolute savages. We also have this funky little artillery piece for Khorne's army, the Skull Cannon. As you can see, it's a cannon on top and some weird fucking creature below, which apparently fires flaming skulls, as people have told me. Big armor piercing weapon strength at 465, nice range at 420 as well. Fire and magical damage on their ammo, as well as on their melee attacks, which is also armor piercing and anti-infantry, so they can charge around like a chariot, do some work there, although their melee defense is pretty bad, so you don't want to leave them in prolonged combat, but still, nice for Khorne to have a bit of a ranged artillery piece option, especially as it is very mobile and pretty speedy. So there you go, all of Khorne's units that we got to see. I'm sure there are more, but this is just the ones that we got to see in this survival game mode. Lots of cool stuff for Khorne's army, and of course for Kislev as well. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff to look forward to. They are going to be revealing more about these two armies over the coming month, so interesting to see what they drop there. I'll likely cover all of that as well. But how are you feeling? I did a poll asking people which faction they were most looking forward to, and Kislev came out on top with most of the vote, but I'm wondering if Khorne has maybe grabbed a few away now. Maybe he stole some Kislevites and turned them into Khornites. Cornflakes? Corn boys? I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching, hope you've enjoyed this. See you in the future.